So I'm here with the latest installment of the world famous cultural phenomenon, Cringe-Take King. I'm your host, Phosphorescence King, and I have the latest cringe-ass take for people to laugh at and make fun of me for and hurt my feelings. Today, I have a special kind of cringe for you to snack on. The kind of cringe that just makes you wriggle and shiver in your seat. Like the feeling you get when you rub against like the seatbelt of a car the wrong way and your body just goes kind of numb, right? You see, my dumbass opinion of the day is I actually don't completely hate the fucking Blizzard diversity chart. I'm the kind of guy who will give anything the benefit of the doubt. And I do think that while definitely questionable in many ways, the diversity graph system as a whole makes some sense. I think Activision-Blizzard as a company handles diversity in a very disingenuous and self-serving way. I think they parade around like jackasses and use like forced diversity as a publicity tool. But I still don't hate the concept of the diversity chart. There are certain things that are a part of the creative process that aren't really glamorized in the way pop culture likes to portray artistry, right? Recently, Persona 5's Twitter following made a big shitstorm over some piece of scrapped content that was dug up by some means, where all of the party members have like this slapstick gag where they take turns beating the shit out of Ryuji, and people reacted to this in a very strange way to me. You know, people are like, oh my god, how could they do this? This is fucking, this is so awful. Why did they think this was a good idea? What could have been going through there? But like, what are you talking about? They didn't. It was scrapped content. They didn't put it in the game. They didn't think it was a good idea. If you've never worked on a creative project in a professional field, you probably don't know how much of the creative process is unsexy bullshit. How much of the creative process is just testing a million different fucking ideas to see what sticks. Graphic designers will draft up literally dozens or even hundreds of potential designs for like a t-shirt print or like a nice flyer for an event or the look of a website. The creative process is laden with just trying shit out, seeing what works, making judgment calls for what to change, what to cut, and how to refine things. I have no doubt that the thought process for the scrapped Ryuji scene was something along the lines of, oh, well, maybe we'll just have this slightly lighthearted, like, slapstick gag to offset the seriousness of the life-threatening situation that the group was just all in, you know, some whiplash or something like that. They whipped up a draft to look at it. No doubt they whipped up drafts of countless other ideas in different parts of the game, and that part of the game, and variations were considered as well. And they thought, you know, this really doesn't actually land like we wanted it to. It doesn't work that well, and they scrapped it. In fact, some things that do make it into the final drafts, I'll talk about this in a second. Here, hang on. This shit happens all of the time, my dudes. I hate to burst your bubble, but most of the time, a piece of art that doesn't just pour out of someone's head fully formed. There's a ton of trial and error involved in the whole fucking shabil. Alright, take the diversity tool Blizzard posted about. Now, imagine the same thing, but not about, like, diversity. Not about anything social or political, right? Imagine it's something like color scheme, or just, you know, anything else, you know, to keep your creativity fresh. This is especially true of creative projects that involve big teams of people, like at a company, for instance, especially teams that have people coming and going that aren't a consistent group that all know each other. The more people that are involved in a project, the more communication and systems of communication need to be put in place so everyone's ideas can work and flow and make sense. Tools, or at the very least organizational systems similar to this, are not at all uncommon for creative projects as mechanical ways to expand your thought process, give you a kind of bird's eye view of your work. It doesn't mean the creative process is necessarily defined by these algorithms. It's just a tool that you can use to get a different perspective of your thoughts and ideas. A lot of people are making fun of the idea that, oh, without a robot, Blizzard would never make diverse characters. But, like, having tools that help the creative process is not a bad thing in any sense. The vast majority of professional artists use tools or creative exercises similar to this to help with their process, expand their field of view, expand their ideas and such. If you're going to criticize that creative process, it begs the question, what do you think the results would be if you were to be tasked to work in a team and make games for a big company? What mistakes would you make? What oversights would you have? What creative pockets would you fail to hit? All creatives have oversights that they need a shift in their perspective to see. A lot of writers especially have issues with, say, accidentally writing all of their characters in a fictional story to speak in similar ways or have similar senses of humor, because that's what comes naturally to the writer, but to a reader it makes it feel like the universe is inorganic. Tools or exercises like this are vital to effective character writing, world building, so on, in countless creative works that have been released to widespread fame and success. I don't think it's reasonable to criticize the fact that they have an extra tool/exercise in their arsenal. It's never a bad idea to at least look at your work through another pair of eyes or another exercise, another set of view. This is basically just an advanced form of, like, Grammarly, you know? Grammarly is a tool that that will call you out if you say, I don't know, overuse this word or this phrase too much in your writing, or if your sentence structure is odd or inconsistent or too long or anything like that. Yes, professional writers use tools like these. Professionals are much more likely to use tools than non-professionals because professionals understand their practical value much more than the common man, you know? A professional understands where their work will be checked with what tool that they use, so they can spend most of their thought process on other things and allow the tools to do what they are designed to do. The common man who is ignorant to their own mistakes in their writing or any other creative process is less likely to use those tools because they don't see the value until they are shown it. A professional is aware of common weaknesses and mistakes and knows which tools to use to proofread for these kinds of issues. So the fact that there is a tool to assist the creative process, I don't think can possibly be an issue, even if it's something weird and goofy like this. But let's talk about the notion of diversity in this tool. Now, the majority of writers, at some point, have to write for characters that they don't relate to. Most commonly, you'll see clear examples of, like, male writers failing to write female characters very well, because the writer just doesn't know what they're doing when trying to create the thoughts and actions of someone they don't have the lived experience of. The lack of diversity in media already stems primarily from what the creators of media are used to from their own personal life experiences and their own consumption of media. Two parts. As in, if someone grows up being really into video games, right, and eventually gets into the gaming industry and makes games, if they grew up consuming media that is full of cis white characters, it's just what they know. You know, like, that's what they grew up on, what they naturally think of when they're creating their new media. Media begets media. So, if a game dev team is filled with cis white guys, or at the very least primarily people who grew up consuming media filled with cis white guys, they're naturally inclined to do the same. It's not a choice, it's just instinct. It's just, like, the thought that is the first thing to pop into their head, you know? It's just something they don't think about. Just like those mistakes, you know, Grammarly is designed to help you fix. It taps you on the shoulder and lets you know when you're making mistakes that you're just not thinking about. Before you make fun of this, like I said, I think you should try to enter some creative medium and develop your craft enough to be able to work on a professional team, and still have the focus and awareness and ability to think about matters like diversity or anything else, like all aspects of creativity in your work. not only be aware of it, but also succeed at it. Succeed at writing for characters that that you don't relate to. It's not as easy as you might think. It's one of the clearest examples of something that is very easy to criticize while being very difficult to actually do. It requires a lot of talent and awareness to not run into any of these sorts of issues when you're working in creativity. If you're a guy and you try and fail to write a reasonable female character, people are going to look at the bad female character, and it is so easy, right? It is so easy for people to say, oh, lol, this dude doesn't even understand women, bro. What a fucking idiot. Because it feels like, not being sexist and not being racist are the easiest things in the world, right? But the creative process isn't as easy as just that. That's another thing. Most of the time, most people are inclined to think that when they consume some piece of fictional media, that it must be the complete vision of the artist on display, right? That's maybe you understand that that's not necessarily true, but that's just how you're going to look at most media at a face value. This is not true hardly ever, right? Most people who work on creative projects have terrible anxiety about their own work. They're the closest to it. They scrutinize it the hardest most of the time. Again, try it for yourself. Try to write a fictional story filled with characters that you don't personally relate to culturally in terms of life experiences, like people with certain disabilities, mental or physical, cultural backgrounds, whatever. Try doing that and see if you come up with a work that you're actually proud of. If you're an American cis white guy, neurotypical, whatever, can you write and tell a story about the life of an autistic black girl living in France? Are you confident in your ability to tell that story and not have it come across as disingenuous or ignorant or cringeworthy? Are you confident that you'll write that story and then you'll look at your final draft and think, yeah, I did a good job? I think most of the time, when you make some creative work, you'll look it over and think, oh my god, oh, this is so fucking bad. This doesn't come across how I wanted it to at all. This is probably the case for a lot of professionals as well. When you read a story with badly written female characters, sure, sometimes it might be because the author is like sexist or misguided or whatever, but I'd wager that in many cases the writer thinks the same way that you do about the cast. The female cast. He probably looks at his female characters and he thinks, oh, fuck, oh, God, this is so embarrassing. Oh, fuck, I'm really trying here, guys. I just can't get it to work. My female characters are so fucking bad. Oh, God. For larger projects, a lot of the time, and again, let's talking about that like Persona 5 Ryuji gag that people didn't like very much, right? It's really stupid to assume that everything in a piece of media is there because the creator thought it was a great idea to include it, right? Some ideas, some execution of ideas is going to be better than others. The creators know this as well, like the people who make creative things know this way more than you, the people nitpicking shit like this do. It is entirely possible, and this shit happens all the time. It's possible that they had some deadline to hit, had to use whatever they had already made, right? Like, oh, well, we already put some development time and effort into this idea, which didn't actually turn out very good. If we were to scrap this garbage and start from the beginning to make a totally different scene or assets or whatever we would need to do, it would take way more dev time. There's no guarantee it would turn out better on the next idea. Maybe the next idea will also be bad. And we already made most of this thing already. This art is give and take. You need the producers, whose job it is to come in and say, enough is enough, hit this fucking deadline, I don't care if it isn't perfect, finish something so we can have a product. At every step of the creative process, having that person is vital for all art. You need someone to ground your work in reality. Otherwise, the perfectionism and attachment to keep coming up with new ideas will bloat a project to infinity, and nothing will ever get done. Or done well, at least. So yeah, sometimes something that made its way into a game because they already had enough work done to complete it this way relatively easily, and it would have taken a lot more work to replace it with something better by that point in the dev process. Again, being the bad cop, the bad guy who says, oh, finish something, you don't have the time or money to do this thing that you want to do. It's not a glamorous or romantic position to be in, but it is so important to every creative industry. Talk to literally anyone. Go down to a fucking bakery, right, that makes like special artsy cakes or whatever, and ask someone in charge there how important it is to have someone put their fucking foot down and set deadlines and limitations on the artists, on the creatives. It has to work in a balance. A strong producer, a strong perfectionist, a strong creative. If any of those forces are lacking in a creative team, the project flounders in various ways. Anyways, the ideal solution for the diversity issue is probably just for people to simply write stories that they can relate to, or work on a team of diverse people who can contribute their own ability to relate to a diverse cast or diverse scenarios. Of course, extremely talented writers can overcome some of these hurdles with research, experience, trial and error, and overwhelming skill, but it is not easy. In reality, the problem at something like a place like Activision-Blizzard making diversity isn't that they're necessarily they're so incompetent to create diverse characters without, quote-unquote, relying on tools like this. The real problem is the team itself isn't diverse enough for these problems to be solved naturally, which is more of a problem with the industry as a whole and all the creative industries. The fact that so many people in positions of creative power often aren't diverse enough to tell diverse stories in the first place. Tools like this are simply what has to happen for diverse stories to be told by an overwhelmingly non-diverse power structure in entertainment media. So, I hope I've explained why I'm fairly forgiving of both the nature of this tool itself and the need for a creative tool to assist a non-diverse team to create a more diverse cast. The main other issue of, like, cringe that we have to discuss is the actual parameters of how they built this specific tool to work. This, I have no information on, obviously. Like, I don't know why being an Arab scores you 7 points. I don't know how they calculated these things, but here are my theories. Here are the things that I think are, like, potential ways it could go down, right? These could have been done by a think tank, a think group that just had some sort of discussion about what should achieve what value. And remember, the tool is just a tool. It's not like, it doesn't control the end result of what they make. It's just a tool that they use to give themselves an extra set of eyes to their work. So the precise values of the numbers aren't the most important thing, necessarily. This also depends on the mentality that they have of diversity. It depends on how they're using the term. Are they talking about diversity in real life or diversity in fictional media? I think, based on the numbers that I see that they put into this fucking thing, I think it's more likely that this chart is for making diverse characters that are diverse in terms of that they don't show up a lot in fictional media, rather than making characters that are diverse because, they're real world, like, super crazy diverse or whatever. Do you see what I mean? Like, people criticize the tool because it seems like, you're saying that cis, white, male, middle class, whatever, are perceived by the tool to be zeros on the scale, which means that you're perceiving that to be, like, the normal type of person, like a non-diverse person. And they were criticizing that, but I think this is less of, like, the tool being made with the mentality that, white people are the default humans, and more with the mentality that those values represent zeros on the scale because they represent the overwhelming majority of fictional characters that appear in media. Do you see? So Egyptians are high on the diversity tool because Egyptians don't show up a lot in fictional media. Maybe it's all fictional media they're looking at. Maybe it's just video games. Maybe these were just thought up by a think tank. Maybe it's based off of actual statistical data, like all video game characters and percentages of them that are Egyptian or something along those lines. I don't know how they decided on their data brackets, but some explanations do make more sense than others and are more reasonable than others. Again, I don't think the company itself is, like, praiseworthy. I'm not, like, patting them on the back for their handling of diversity in media. I think they try to pretend like it's more heroic than it is, when in reality they probably just view diversity as a marketing tool and just as a default setting to apply to something. And I guess that does depend on how you personally view diversity in media. Like, there is an argument to be made for the end result this achieves, right? Even if they don't care and they're just doing it to fill out a quota for diversity, one could argue that it does result in a greater diversity of characters doing it this way. So, depends on how you look at that. I do think Blizzard kind of uses and abuses their characters in this sense. Like, I think that the Overwatch cast at the original launch of the game was fine, but then they kind of slapped more shit onto the characters and it became more disingenuous as time went on. I think there are holes in this diversity chart as it is currently set up. Like, it's just the vibe I get from, like, say, we see Soldier 76 was made to be gay because without that he would have been the lowest rank on the diversity chart at the time. But, like, a diversity chart should include people who do also score low on the chart. Like, a cis white guy, like some, like, regular conservative dude would naturally be someone on a chart of different types of people with different backgrounds and ideologies and such. So the chart itself is inherently, like, making, like, that kind of zero ranking, like, cis white guy whatever not acceptable or not includable, which seems, at least on some level, counterproductive. Do you see what I mean? This is very common, especially with, like, female versus femininity, right? Like, just because something is common doesn't mean it's inherently wrong. It just means it's improperly balanced. Like, yeah, okay, too many cis white guys in media? That doesn't mean if we have a cis white guy in our game or show or whatever that it needs to be changed to something else, right? Like, this mindset is still applying a bias, an insistence on people. You know, like, if you say, this character, like, this female character shouldn't be sexualized because it's the commonplace, you are inherently still applying a bias. You're still insisting a gender role. It's just the opposite of the stereotype. You know, you're still insisting, oh, women should be this gender role as non-sexual and non-feminine and such, right? So there are too many similar sexualized depictions of women in media. Okay, that doesn't mean this is inherently a thing that is wrong or worthy of scorn in an individual piece. It's just imbalanced. Too much of the same thing without enough of other stuff on a global sense. And an individual is not responsible for a global cultural imbalance.
Uncover unconscious bias, such as why certain traits are seen as male versus female, or why characters from certain ethnic backgrounds are given similar personalities or behaviors. This is a thing that I do find interesting. Character traits being seen as male versus female. There are definitely some unhealthy, like, biases where that stuff is concerned. But I had this conversation with somebody on Twitch recently who was like, they gave me a compliment. They actually said, I like you as a female Twitch streamer because you just wear a t-shirt and you're not wearing a ton of makeup. Like, I don't understand why girls have to dress this way and wear cat ears. And my response was just, can we just let women be women? I feel like there was this thing where sometimes women are only allowed in male-dominated spaces if they also act like men. And I think some of these tools can kind of lean towards that too, where it's like deciding that women should be less feminine and that something about appearing to be feminine or having cleavage, or even, like, in some cases the sexy female video game character trope, can be seen as a negative because it's feminine. I don't know. It's a weird thing that I don't really know how to reckon with. Like, I feel like I'm being told that women being busty or curvaceous or wearing certain kinds of clothing is unrealistic and doesn't happen in the real world, even though it totally does, or that it should be frowned upon or is only for the male gaze. It's just confusing. There's a lot going on there. And I'm like, why? Sometimes I think that women should just be allowed to be feminine, and that's okay. But maybe that's just me. I don't know.
But, yeah. So those points aside, I don't think the diversity tool is that strange or inhuman by itself. Thought exercises like this are very common in pro-diversity think pieces already. Like, here's a really quick one you can do. Google search random faces. Actually, you can probably just look up this. I don't know if it has a specific name, what the thought exercise is called, but Google search random faces, find a diverse collection of individual pictures of people's faces, real people's faces, line them all up. Not like famous people, not like people you would know, just strangers. But then, one by one, look at each person photographed and draft a character for them. Not a fantasy character, not like anything like that. You have to envision how this person you're looking at, just the face of, and like whatever clothes they're wearing, whatever background of the picture is in, whatever. You have to envision this person existing in the real world. Come up with their name, occupation, date of birth, friends, family, favorite song, favorite film, educational background, hobbies, all sorts of shit like that. You have to fill out each of these parameters for every single random stranger you find a photo of. This is a thought experiment that people do in order to uncover their subconscious biases. You're searching your own brain to see how it naturally arrives at conclusions. You're not trying to fight your own instincts. You're trying to find the flaws in how your brain makes assumptions about things, how it connects pieces of data. Everyone, literally all humans have racist, sexist, classist, whatever assumptions that they subconsciously make about people. That's just how the brain works. It draws biased connections to things. It categorizes things. This is what makes human bias dangerous in the first place, because everyone has it. Everyone has a brain that draws flawed connections to things, subconsciously. Racist connections, sexist connections, etc. The point of this particular thought experiment is to understand your own biases and what leads your subconscious thoughts and inclinations. It is far more dangerous and misguided for people to just ignore their own racist or sexist thoughts and pretend they don't exist and be like, okay, well, I am a totally not racist, not sexist person. All those people, they're racist and sexist, not me. I have none of that shit. That's not how it works. We shouldn't do that with ourselves and pretend like we're perfect people that don't need to stay vigilant to avoid negative biases, and we shouldn't pretend other people who admit to having biases are evil because of it. I don't really see this diversity tool as anything that different from the thought exercises that are already performed by multiculturalist educational classes, advocates, whatever. The difference, of course, is that one of those is made for educational purposes, and this one is made for marketing and company profit, like the commercial value of diversity. Anyways, I hope I've explained in a way that is satisfactory why I am not that opposed to this diversity graph in theory, to be used as a creative tool. Hopefully I'll finish some of my other videos soon, so I'll get more content out to my handsome, sexy subscribers. Anyways, see ya.